Fifth dimensional Earth split is happening now. We're going to discuss what this means. We're going to talk about the difference between the 3D narcissism that currently we live under, and we'll explain how the 5D self-aware unity frequency is coming in. You're going to want to stay for the whole video because I'm going to go in depth looking at severed consciousness reintegration. We're going to talk about the karmic avatar character dissolution and how the Illuminati is being completely exposed and how that's going to increase. Interdimensional meditation is giving humans more power to dissolve the 3D ego, and we're going to talk about the 3 octave dimensions and what they are, how they're manifesting right now. If you're new, this is the Thunder Wizard YouTube channel. Welcome. Be sure that you come every Wednesday and Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern for the live guided interdimensional meditation. And yeah, that's free. We had one yesterday. It was very powerful. We're going to do another one on Wednesday. So I hope you show up. And if you can't make the live version, then go to the live section on the YouTube channel, and they're archived there, going back, many meditations. All right, let's talk about the fifth dimensional Earth split and how it's happening now. So, as you know, I know you've heard me say it a billion times in case somebody's new. In June of 2022, I did CE5, which is human initiated contact with extraterrestrials. I was successful at that. I have been in contact and in communication with extraterrestrials from higher dimensions all over the multiverse ever since that time. So I won't get into it. If you haven't seen it, you can go watch my video under the Aliens playlist where it says how I became an extraterrestrial. You can see all the crazy stuff that happened. And it just got crazier. It hasn't stopped. Those of you who are doing the interdimensional meditations, you know what I'm talking about. Some comments have just been uploaded. We have a live Zoom group class that you can be a part of if you go to thunderwizard.com and subscribe at the appropriate level. And people who are having these experiences with these beings, we're talking about that. So this is going to explode over the whole earth. When? That's really the question. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Everything is absolutely shifting and changing, and there is nothing that's going to stop it. Nothing. So, I'm going to share with you some thoughts about this. So first, let's talk about the difference between 3D and 5D. So 3D is based on narcissism, isolation, separation. 5D is based on self-aware unity and bliss. By the way, I'm just using the word 5D because that is the phrase that people are most familiar with. Truth is, when we start talking about dimensions, it's a whole other subject. So I'm not being literal that it's going to be a fifth dimensional experience. It might very well be. It could be a fifth dimensional experience. It also might very well be a different frequency than where we're at. But whatever it is, it's going to be huge. So, I wanted to make a whole video on narcissism because it's really important to understand that, because that is the basis of the third dimension. So narcissism is not what people think. The word narcissism is thrown around very cavalierly, and again, like the word dimension, people really don't know what they're talking about. Narcissism isn't just being focused on yourself. That's not narcissism. Narcissism isn't being egotistical. Narcissism isn't feeling superior to others. That's not what narcissism is. If we're talking about narcissism from a psychological perspective, it is something altogether different. And so until we truly understand that, for instance, there are narcissists who spend their whole lives devoted to other people. I could guess Mother Teresa was very likely a communal narcissist. So people who are involved in religions, cult leaders, even the ones that go around and just completely give their lives away to others. In fact, the Jesus character in the New Testament is absolutely a communal narcissist. So where does narcissism come from? It doesn't, as I said, it doesn't come from thinking you're better than others or, being in love with yourself. In fact, it's quite the opposite. A narcissist, from a psychological perspective, and we're talking about the mental illness, people who suffer from an acute personality disorder, a narcissistic personality disorder. We are talking about somebody who has a black hole inside of them where their identity should be. There is nothing, is emptiness. They don't have an identity. That's why they present themselves to the world as being perfect in all of these ways. That's why they have to, why they're many times extremely successful in business or in entertainment. It's because they feel like they will die if they don't prove to the world that they're not this worthless piece of garbage that they feel that they are. And usually what's happened is that they were born in a scenario where there wasn't any love. Either that or things were very confusing, or there was outright severe abuse. All of these things are different expressions of telling somebody or giving them the feeling that they don't have any value in and of themselves. So that is what narcissism is, and that is the basis of not just the third dimension, but it is the basis of the society that we live in. And our society has become more and more narcissistic as time has gone on. And, when we go back to the Middle Ages, for instance, by the way, everybody's got the whole Yuga thing wrong. Kali Yuga was in the Middle Ages. We're not in Kali Yuga anymore. Kali Yuga is the time period where human beings are the least connected to their soul. So during that time in the Middle Ages, as you know, people were put to death for reading things in a certain language, for just having a specific belief, for anything. It was such a horrific time to live, and you were so devalued, this is why monotheism cropped up. This is why Christianity, Islam, and Judaism took off during this time. They became the major religions in much of the world because of the Kali Yuga, third dimensional feelings of isolation and self-devaluation. So this feeling of isolation, self-devaluation, not being lovable, not feeling lovable, not feeling valuable, this is what creates narcissism. So we live in that. So codependence is also narcissism. People think that, codependence and narcissism are two polar opposites. They're not. They're the same thing. Codependence is narcissism turned outward, whereas narcissism is internalized. You take your fantasy of what you wish you could be, the fantasy of what you think you would have to be in order to be loved, and then you internalize that. You create a fantasy world inside of you, and then this is why narcissists take hostages in life. This is why cult leaders, they can't let anybody leave their cult, because they take hostages. Because what happens is they co-opt you and pull you into their internal, completely unrealistic fantasy where they are God and you serve them. And so codependence is the opposite of that, where you look for somebody to worship and to serve, and you get your value, you get your feeling of lovability from whether or not you can fix people. And this is why codependents come across very loving. And they come across, again, communal narcissism is just an extreme form of codependence. And again, codependence does not mean that you need other people. People conflate the word dependence on the end of that to mean that you need other people. That's not what codependence means. It can manifest that way, where you're very clingy and you need other people. But codependence really means that you get your feeling of lovability from what you do for others, either how you look or what you physically do or something like that. And I'm here to tell you that codependents are the worst people, the worst. You've noticed I respond very negatively when people come at me in a codependent way on my channel. I'll make a video, an hour-long video going in depth about some, intense experience, and I may be having some challenges, absorbing the experience. And out of all of that hour long, talking about what's going on, there will be people who will go, you know what, you just need to relax. You know what, just ground yourself and it'll all be okay. And they don't understand why I get so angry, because really I talked for an hour about all this, and the only thing you can do is to try and come and stop me from having some feelings. Well, that's because their codependence is being triggered. And a codependent isn't somebody who wants to help others. A codependent is somebody who has these internal discomfort, pain, fear, sadness, loneliness. There's a deep pain having to do with, on a relationship level and on an ego level, and they shove it down because that's what we do to survive. Somebody comes along and has a feeling, and so their first response is to put that fire out because they don't want to feel it. They're unconscious of it within themselves. So I respond very negatively when people, will say, just ground yourself, it'll all be okay. And, what it means is that you didn't hear a word I said. You haven't been with me on my journey as I shared it with you. The only thing that you wanted to do was to stop the uncomfortable feeling in yourself. And so you passive aggressively and unconsciously, because you think you're being kind, you think you're helping me. But on an unconscious level, what you're saying is, shut up. I don't want to feel that. You're making me feel something I don't like. Stop it. This is why I have such a strong reaction to that kind of codependent inability to accept where people are at. So codependence and narcissism are the same. They're the same issue. It means that you don't have a firm sense of self. Because if you do, you're okay when things aren't perfect. You're okay when you're not happy. You're okay when you're sad, when you're upset. You can tolerate that. You allow yourself to have that. That is the sign of a healthy person, and that's the sign of an identity, which is the opposite of the third dimension. So we're having this split. This split is happening right now. So let's go ahead and get into it. So let's talk about the severed consciousness reintegration. There is a series on, and I recommend people watch it, a series on Apple TV called, I think it's called Severance. And it is absolutely very similar to my experience when it comes to waking up from the third dimension to the fifth dimension. So in the fifth dimension, and again, I'm just using that word, it just means outside of the third dimension. So, the third dimension is its own closed little consciousness experiment. And in that consciousness experiment, you experience isolation, you experience being separated from others. And so this creates a scenario where you think you can get away with, lying to yourself or lying to other people. Because other people in the third dimension might not consciously know that you're lying to them. But that's just, again, the third dimensional little experiment, consciousness experiment. Outside of that, everybody lives in a scenario where They connect to everybody. There's no unconsciousness within anybody outside of there. So extraterrestrials don't have an unconscious mind. They are fully aware of all of their thoughts and feelings, and they are fully connected to other people. So they don't have this isolation. That is completely different. By the way, that is the main reason why there isn't open contact yet. Main reason we don't have open contact, besides the fact that human beings are actively at war and shooting down extraterrestrials that are visiting our planet, but because they're in a different frequency than us most of the time. And when we're in our third dimensional experience of isolation, self-devaluation, feeling of separation, it's a frequency that creates what we call, people have called it the veil. It creates a veil so we can't even see them. They could be standing right next to us and we wouldn't even see them. So severed consciousness reintegration. So in this movie, or in this series, Severance, you'll have to forgive me, I'm getting over a chest cold here. So in this series, Severance, what happens is there are people who work for this company called Lumen, which, as it turns out, is symbolic of the narrative. The 3D narrative that everybody's waking up from, the lies. This company in this series represents that. And so they're this giant worldwide corporation that pretty much owns and controls everything. And so there are people that work there that are called severed workers. And so a severed worker is somebody who gets this chip put in their brain. And what happens is, when they go to work, they'll get in an elevator, and when they go down the elevator to the lower floor, once they pass, they don't explain it, but assuming there's some kind of frequency or something like that turns on the chip. And then what ends up happening is that another consciousness is created. And the consciousness that is created is basically them, but they have no memories of anything outside of that floor. So they don't know anything about the real world. They only know what's presented to them. And everything is sort of like in the 80s, 70s and 80s, nothing, there's like cassette tapes and, things like that. And so they live their entire life on this. So what ends up happening is when the above ground person who has a life and has memories and knows their parents, and they might even be married and have kids and all that, when they show up to work, they go down this elevator and then the chip kicks in. They then become this new personality. And the only memories that person has is what they've experienced on there. So if they've been severed for a year, they will only remember what they've experienced throughout that year, right? So they have a life, but it's much more isolated, and they have no idea who they are. They know that they have an Audi, which is their quote higher self, their above ground self that has a life and memories and all of that. So they know that exists, and they know that they're an innie, but they don't have any memories. So they sit around and they start talking about what they think the real world out there is like. It's really amazing. But the really sad part about it all is that their life never ends. They never leave work. So even if they're Audi, like if they go home at 5 o'clock and they get in or they leave work, they get in the elevator and they go up and then they switch back to their normal self. Of course, the normal person doesn't remember anything that happened down on the severed floor. And so what ends up happening is that the people on the severed floor, they never leave work. So even if the person above, takes a month off, that just means that the person underneath will be, shut off for a month. So their experience is after they've worked for 8 hours, they get in the elevator and then all of a sudden they wake up again and the doors are opening and it's 9 o'clock in the morning. So they never sleep. It's just continuous work, and it never ever stops. And so then in the series, there are people that reintegrate, and I'll try not to ruin it for you, but reintegration is a process whereby they become aware of both realities. And so they're able to take all of their memories and bring them together. So this is what is happening to me. Outside of the third dimension, in the higher fifth dimension, I have another reality. There's my true identity, which is, as I've shared with you, every human being that is here on planet Earth is actually a deity. Third dimensional reality is not base reality. It's not a lie. It's not an illusion per se. It is just a much more focused perception of reality. And when we're in this much more focused perception of reality, the third dimensional experience, we don't have access to the memories that are, the above, our Audi, our real person. We don't have access to it. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. But anyway, so that's why we make up religion. We wonder what happens after death. We wonder, is there any place we go? We wonder about higher dimensions, but, we don't really know. We don't have any experience. So the idea is for us to go through a reintegration process where we reintegrate into our third dimensional self the memories and our identity, both before we incarnated and after we incarnated, in between lives. Again, this third dimensional experience is just that. So we think this is, people complain about having to be reincarnated over and over again, but they don't realize that experience, even if you have thousands of lives down here, you're not trapped. It's just, you go to Disneyland. You're at Disneyland for 8 hours, spend all day at Disneyland, and then you leave. And then it's just one day out of your life. These lives that we live down here are just these tiny little fractions of our experience. But we don't realize that when we're down here in it. So what I believe the 5D ascension is going to be, at least for some, it's already happening for me, is going to be this reintegration into our true self outside of this reality, to be reintegrated and still be walking around in a third dimensional perception, and at the same time being aware of who we are outside of this reality. So if you want to get a taste of that, if you don't know what I'm talking about, then the first place to go is to go to these live guided interdimensional meditations every Wednesday and Saturday. You can go and do the recorded ones. They're uploaded. And that's my goal. My goal is, there's two, I have two goals actually. One is to use my Audi, my higher dimensional self. I use his power to help bring the ascension event on planet Earth. And the other intention is I want you guys to have that same experience. I want you to experience what it's like to begin reintegrating so that you can be a 3D and a 5D being at the same time. And it's not necessarily an easy experience, and it's not what you would think. Anyway, that's a whole other subject. All right, so severed consciousness reintegration, karmic avatar character dissolution. All right, so there's another experience I'm having. So one of the things that's been happening is, as you know, over these past couple of years, I've been shown my past life here on planet Earth. I talk about that, the whole Atlantis thing. I won't get into that. But I had a past life on Atlantis, and I was very involved in what happened, which resulted in the flood catastrophe that wiped out the civilization that was here on Earth 13,000 years ago. And the only reason I've come to find out, the only reason that I've been made aware of that life is so that I could be reintegrated to my higher dimensional self, so that I could do the work to help shift the Earth back up. Because we've been in Kali Yuga, and we're now in Dwapara Yuga, which is one level up, but we're still in a very low frequency experience. And so that needs to balance out. So it's now time for the world to shift up to a higher experience. And because of the things that I was involved with 13,000 years ago, and the karma that I received as a result of my actions, I have this karmic responsibility to do this work that I'm doing now. How did I get on that subject? Let's see. So the karmic avatar character dissolution. So my third dimensional avatar. My name is Michael Denny. I was born, Southern California, XYZ, blah blah blah. It's a character. It's a character that I've been living, the past 61 years, and so that character has to go away, or at the very least, I have to not be so identified with it that I can't become myself. I was an actor for years, professional actor for years, and I was one of those method actors that I could get really deep into the character, so much so that whatever was going on, crying, or my body fully believing everything, and then as soon as the director says cut, or as soon as the curtain goes down, I wipe tears and I'm back to being normal again. And it's I know that I was playing a character. It was just pretend. And so I'm now working towards being able to do that in this life, where I'm seeking to be able to understand that this third dimensional experience of me is just that, and I'm not attached to that, and to be able to just go up to my higher dimensional self and expand into that while being here. So I've come to understand that there's a 2D, a 3D, and a 5D. And how that's going to manifest, I don't know. And I don't care if you use D like density or dimensions. I don't care, because again, I'm just throwing words out. But what I'm referring to as 5D would be when we're in that state of reintegration. We're still on planet Earth, or a version of planet Earth, but we are reintegrated with ourselves, and we remember this avatar life and all of the memories that has, and we also remember who we are outside of this. And so that would be in the 5D, and of course the 5D version would be a much more blissful, in the 5D physical Earth, eventually there's going to be no banks, there's going to be no money, there's going to be no class structure, there's going to be no religion. There are going to be people really truly living their deepest joy, their deepest soul desire. And that's all that people are going to be doing. We will have direct interaction with civilizations from other galaxies. We will be part of that. And anyway, it'll be a heaven on earth. People's focus will be spiritual and personal enjoyment. And anything else they do will be, if there's such a thing as jobs, it'll be because they enjoy it. If there are service jobs, people will do it because they enjoy it. You know, they enjoy working with plants, and they enjoy working with crops, and they enjoy creating new ways to build interdimensional homes. They enjoy the technology surrounding zero energy, so that you can have something the size of a matchbox that'll power the entire, city of New York. Right? It'll be something that's blissful and enjoyable. We'll have a direct connection to planet Earth. We'll be in balance with her. There will be no more illness. So that is something that will come. How long it's going to take, I don't know. But that's what we call 5D. 3D is going to be similar to, we're kind of in it right now, where people are waking up. I mean, there's a revelation that is happening. Call it the deep state, call it Illuminati, call it the dark force elites, call it whatever you want. They are being exposed, and there's no turning back. All the stuff you're seeing now, there's no turning back. And again, it doesn't mean that there won't be hiccups, and the dark force elites are probably more dangerous now than they ever have been, because they're on the verge of losing everything. So, but our third dimensional shift up will be similar to where we are now, but society will have collapsed, banks will have collapsed, governments will have collapsed, and people will be working to learn a new way of living and community and all that. But it'll still be very similar to this. This is my guess. And then the 2D version will be, there will be a version of reality where the dark forces win and people live as slaves in the smart cities and all of that. So how this is going to come about, I don't know. How we make the shift, I don't know yet. But it'll be by our choice. And this is what I'm calling the karmic dissolution. And either you don't, the people who don't dissolve their karmic attachments to their third dimensional identity are going to end up in that 2D world. People who are struggling with it but making progress will be in the 3D world. And those who work towards reintegration, to reintegrate with your higher self, that's going to be the people who end up in the 5D Earth. Again, I'm not saying this because I read it somewhere. I'm not saying it because I've seen it yet. I don't know exactly how. I've energetically in my physical body been to what we would call 5D, and it's unbelievable, unbelievably blissful and amazing. And so I've had experience walking around being in that mindset, and I know that we'll get there. When and how that's going to happen, that's what's not clear to me yet. The Illuminati is being completely exposed. I talk about that. Interdimensional meditation is giving humans more power to dissolve the 3D ego. So my experience is to get that reintegration, the most, I don't know anything more powerful than that. Interdimensional meditation, which, let me be clear about that. Interdimensional meditation isn't a whole lot different than normal meditation. There's nothing super special about it other than you are consciously making the decision that you are inviting higher dimensional beings to connect with your consciousness. In order for that to happen, you have to shift your frequency up. And when that happens, you will begin to experience things you've never experienced. I don't care. Again, I've been doing the highest level energy practices that have ever existed on planet Earth. And nothing that I've done, no matter how blissful, no matter out-of-body experiences, shamanic traveling, you name it, nothing has come close to just literally 30 seconds interacting with a higher dimensional being. The higher dimensional frequencies are so bizarre and so beyond anything I could have even begun to imagine. But when you communicate with them, eventually what will happen, or sometimes right away, is they will begin telling you how they see you. They will begin to start to reveal to you your Audi, your higher dimensional self. And that is going to be a very strange experience. And for some people, the interesting part is that it'll make you uncomfortable. You know, for instance, if a higher dimensional being comes to you and says, you know, you are one of the architects of energetic consciousness in the multiverse. If I were to tell you that, you know, in your third dimensional mind, you might go, wow, that sounds really awesome. I would love to know that. But the reality is that the energy, the frequency associated with that truth, when it makes contact with your consciousness, it actually can cause a feeling of trauma. Somebody in one of the live Zoom classes explained it well. He felt a lot of responsibility, and it doesn't sit well with your third dimensional ego. So, in other words, imagine these innies, the people on the severed floor, all of a sudden getting a huge download of something they can't even begin to comprehend about their life outside. It wouldn't be an amazing experience. I mean, the energy of the higher dimensional beings is amazing and blissful, but it's hard to integrate it into your circuit board. So reintegration is going to be a challenging experience for people, I think. Anyway, so interdimensional meditation is the only way that I know of that really catapults you into that. And so this is why I teach it, and this is why one of the reasons I do it every week is I want to make it available to everybody so that you can wake up to who you truly are and get out of the isolation and the fear and the feeling of being trapped and punished and all of that, which is not accurate. The feelings are accurate. You feel trapped. You feel abused. You feel like you're in a prison. You do feel isolated and disconnected, and you are confused. That's a normal human thing. But when you start to reintegrate, you realize that you were never trapped here. You've never been a prisoner, and you're not a slave. And that's only something that you can experience if you begin to reintegrate. So the 3 octave dimensions are a personal choice. So we already talked about what I think those 3 octaves are. We're calling it 2D, 3D, and 5D. I'm having an interesting experience where I'm interacting with people, and I will have a memory of my interaction with them in past lives. And I will see the karmic. Well, first what will happen is, this is, if you want to understand why when you meet somebody, you have this feeling like you've known them a long time. Or when people talk about, the experiences of twin flames, right? You've got this soul contract and, blah, blah, and why the feelings are so intense. There are 3D reasons. They're usually psychological, but that's just on the surface. But underneath that, there's a past life connection. There's an unresolved, people get married. I'm going to tell you something. Most of the time, people get married not because they have this beautiful soul connection. They get married because there's unresolved, traumatic past life interactions that need to be balanced. Same thing with friendships. But if you were aware of that, like if you were to bump into somebody that in a past life they murdered you, or they enslaved you, or you did something like that to them, the feelings that would come up would be so intense and would be so negative that all that would happen is you'd be right back into that scenario. And so, what this third dimensional consciousness experiment does is it gives you this feeling of you feel a strong connection. And what ends up happening is that you work through things, but the things you fight about are the same things that you fought about in a past life. And so I'm seeing this as I'm bumping into people and I'm having these past life remembrances. In one case, bumped into somebody and I became aware of an incredibly, horrifically destructive interaction, that I had with them in a past life, and it hadn't been resolved. And the feelings that came up were so powerful and so negative, and yet they had nothing to do with what was actually going on in my connection with them. Nothing. Very little. The truth is, they were doing things that were triggering those kinds of feelings, but they would have been this big, and my feelings were this big, and I saw what happened. I saw what happened, in that past life before I ran into them. And so I've got this reintegration issue where I'm having two realities, happening simultaneously. And I have the opportunity to just simply drop the old karmic pattern and step into a new one. And so the days of having to replay and keep, getting trapped in this cycle of karma over and over and over again, life after life after life. For instance, my mother in this life was my daughter in a previous life. And so the challenge, the mistakes I made as a father, way back in the 1800s, I ended up being on the other end of those here in the, late 1900s. And so that's what the cycle of karma is in the third dimension. That's coming to an end. So what I believe will happen is I think more and more people will have similar scenarios as me. Now, maybe not, but I believe it will, that you'll bump into somebody and you'll remember who they were in a past life, or you'll meditate and your higher dimensional friends will say, do you remember what happened between the two of you? And then you'll have a remembrance. And then you will be thrust back into the drama of all of those negative feelings or whatever it was. And you can either stop and go, hang on a second. Let's go above that, because that this is just a game. We're down here playing a video game. And it's got nothing to do with who we were up here at this fifth dimensional level. And so I believe it's possible for people to drop like completely impossible things. Somebody's a drug addict or an alcoholic, or somebody's, got a serious, like somebody does have a mental illness, or, they were horrifically abused as a kid, which, psychologically just damages your ability to connect with others. I believe there will come a time when people will be able to just drop all of that and just go to their higher dimensional self. And so I feel like I'm being given that opportunity now, and I'm working on it. It's not easy, but I can see what I'm being shown, which is, you can just drop all that. Even though the feelings are coming up, you can shift up to a higher level. And it's not the denial version, everything is love and light. It's not that. It's not denial. It's something altogether different, where you can just turn the simulation off and just be who you really are. Because everybody underneath whatever their third dimensional virtual reality character is, underneath that is this perfect, unbelievable deity soul that just expands beyond anything you can possibly imagine. All right, so yeah, that's it for me today. I hope you guys are doing well. Thank you for taking this journey with me today. You guys know what to do. If you want to support the channel, Well, first, make sure you go to these live guided interdimensional meditations. They're free every Wednesday and Saturday, 8:30 p.m. There are recorded versions. You can see what we did yesterday, which was really powerful and amazing. You can go and be a part of that if you want. And if you want to support the channel and you want to learn practices which will help you reintegrate, go to thunderwizard.com, subscribe, and or go to the shop and check out all the practices there. My books can be found at michaelwilliamdenny.com. And if you subscribe to the interdimensional meditation or above, you will get access to the prosperity meditation. It'll be free. You can go and get all of the guided interdimensional meditations. I'm still uploading them. I think I've uploaded 4 or 5. There's 2 or 3 more left, but you can get all of those at meditations.thunderwizard.com or at the shop at thunderwizard.com. And that's it. I appreciate everybody's support. You can also just click on the $ button and support. Listen, this, for whatever reason right now, this channel just isn't growing as fast as I want it to, and there's a limited number of people. If every single person that watched one of these videos dropped $1, I'd be swimming in resources. I wouldn't have to ask for anything. So all of the support is very appreciated. That's it, my friends. I wish you all the best. Take very good care of yourselves, and I will see you all very soon.